Alrighty. It's 6:05, so we can go ahead and get started. Um, Thanks to everyone who is in attendance. And so I just hit the record button, so you'll be prompted to click the yes, and then we will work hard to get this uploaded somewhere, probably on our website. And so I will drop that in there. Can one of my e-board members drop the link to our website? And so chances are, if you're here, you're already cognizant of the CRIPSA website, but that and our Instagram account will be the best way to just be aware of our different events, and we'll be we have a survey up there. If you haven't taken it, it's really important for us to get your email, your contact info, so we can send out our kind of our newsletter blasts. We're also on the Knowlton newsletter, so always check your emails. But yeah, so that little survey just has some information about like what type of programming you would like to see in the future. And that's really important for us because we want to make sure that CRIPSA is meeting your needs during this time, especially because we can't do what we've done historically and be in person and stuff like that. So we have I think we have a really great event. We have a great turnout, and so hopefully this is really relevant to you guys. Talking with Professor Leonard, who does the professional development class, and so hopefully some of you are in that class, but he said that this was a topic that had come up recently during the course of class discussion about future career paths. And so we have Nicki Martin and Kyle May, and so they're both from APA Central Ohio section, and they have great experience. And so for both the MCRP students and the undergrad program, I think it'll be really relevant. And if you guys have any questions throughout this conversation, feel free to drop it in the chat, and hopefully we'll have time at the end to answer those questions. So I think that's it. If any other my e-board members have any housekeeping things that I missed, feel free to chime in. But yeah, I think we can turn it over to our speakers, and they can introduce themselves briefly, and then we'll go from there. So Nicki, do you want to start?
First off, thanks so much for having Kyle and myself this evening. It's great to see your faces, even if we can't be with you in person. As mentioned, I'm Nicki Martin. I'm a planner with the City of Dublin, Ohio. I've been there for about 6 years, and I'm also the section director for APA Central Ohio. Take it away, Kyle.
Hey guys, yeah, thanks for having me, for having both of us, Nicki and me. I am a senior planner with a firm called Planning Next. We're based in Columbus, obviously, but we do community planning work around the country, just a variety of types of projects. But yeah, Nick, thanks for the invitation. Great to see so many people tuning in. And I've got complete chaos happening behind me, so if I'm gonna try to mute myself in between in between my speech.
Yeah, thank you guys. So for those who didn't join us in our first meeting in September, glad that you're here. We did a really quick overview on the relationship between CRIPSA and how we're kind of the student extension of APA Ohio, and hopefully Nicki can give a better, excellent, we want to hear it from the source. And so just kind of give us a quick overview of your role and kind of the benefits of being involved as a student, whether you're in the undergrad program or the MCRP program, uh, just being a part of APA Ohio. And I know you have a great event. There's a great event along in this month, and just kind of the game plan moving forward when like us, like APA Ohio, the various sections can't do what they normally have done in the past, considering COVID.
Yeah, sure thing. So before I get into my role and Kyle gets into his role with APA Central Ohio, I guess I want to start by giving kind of an overview of the American Planning Association and how that structure works at various levels. So there is, of course, the national organization, which is really the backbone that we all plug into. So the APA Ohio chapter is the state chapter of the American Planning Association. Many states have their own chapters. Some states have joint chapters if they have smaller memberships. And then within the states, there are sections, which are the local, really the local bridge to the organization. So here at APA Central Ohio, I'm the section director. I've been in that role since about this time last year. It's been a great opportunity to kind of set some goals, create some structure, and figure out how we can engage our student members. So CRIPSA is plugged in at the Central Ohio section level. Nick is technically a board member, but we've yet to have a meeting since the school year got underway. So, you know, he would really be the best conduit to provide you with the latest programming that's happening at the Central Ohio level. And then also really all the way up to national. I know in previous years when there has been a national conference, CRIPSA has, you know, done some programming and some sponsorships, and the Central Ohio section has been, you know, part of those scholarships. So, you know, we're always here to support you, and being engaged with your professional organization is a great way to broaden your experience and also build your resume. So I would certainly encourage that. Kyle, do you want to tag along?
Yeah, sure. No, Nikki, I'll ditto to everything you've said there. I think, Nick, when you asked us on here, I think one of the things you asked us to speak to a little bit was some of the principal benefits of being associated with APA at all of its scales, from the chapter section to the chapter, Ohio, to all the way up into the national. I think, Nick, really gets back to this idea of, how do you find your career in planning? And this isn't like being a mechanic or, a pilot. I mean, it really is about relationships at every scale. And I think that this organization is a great way of cultivating, those types of relationships. So whether it's with, a professional that you admire, or that you like what they do, you want to do what they do. These organizations are great entry points for that. Whether it's at a conference or social events, the second being sometimes an easier route to getting to know people. But, I think it plays a great role in bringing people from where you guys are now, just to finding some interest in our career, because, guys, like, planning it's a really broad term, and you can do a lot of different stuff, within this career. And it's not just public or private sector. I mean, it goes well and far beyond, beyond that. So I think the greatest way in your 2 years, or if you're undergrad 4 years, to get to know this career best is just meet as many people as you can that do something similar to what you think you want to do. And I think that these organizations are a really good entree into that.
Yeah.
And Kyle, really quickly, can you talk about, like, what your role is as education chair?
Yeah, sure, Nick. Yeah. So it's a newer role, Nikki, I think, that we've created here. Uh, Trying to give me some authority or something. I don't know. That's maybe dangerous. No, I think that one of the things we recognize in planning is that it's a field that, even though I think it's pretty cool, and I think we all grew up probably playing SimCity, not a lot of kids really know about planning. It's not like being a doctor or a lawyer, or a mechanic, like I just called out. I mean, it's a career that's little known, but has a big time impact on people's lives and quality of life. And so one of the things with education chairs, I guess there's two purposes. One is to expose this opportunity to kids at that moment when they're kind of making up their mind about what they want to learn about, what they want to study, what they're interested in. I've been involved with, you guys may be familiar with camp architecture, but I've been involved with camp for about 6 or 7 years now. And we've just tried to, it's always been about architecture, which is great, and landscape architecture, which is also great, but planning is right there in that conversation too. And it's important that I think kids know that that's an opportunity. So that from that side, that's really important. The other piece of this when it comes to education is that as planners, just like all these other professional fields, we're asked to have this continuing education piece, right? So when you become an AICP member, you don't just get that for life. You've got to maintain that membership by earning credits. So something that we've tried to do, within my role, is just broaden the opportunity to earn those credits. So it used to be the only way you could get them was to sit in a conference, or but there's other ways of learning on the job. So I think those are really the two aims, Nikki, unless I'm missing one and I'm forgetting about my responsibility on something else.
No, I think you've pretty much touched on it, and maybe just to elaborate on how our programming has adapted since COVID-19. We are doing significantly more online programming, and in 2021, we're looking to do some individual programming. So that might be, a self-guided tour, or other educational opportunities where you don't have to be in a conference setting, because we're probably not going to be in a conference setting anytime soon. So it's been really great working with Kyle and the rest of the team at APA Central Ohio. Since the onset of COVID-19, we've been able to put out a series of webinars at the local level. And then, like Nick had mentioned, there is a big push in October at the state level, supported by all of the local chapters in Ohio, to do an Ohio planning and zoning workshop. Typically every year at the local section, we host a local Central Ohio planning and zoning workshop that's in person. It's our primary source of income as a chapter for the year. And this year we've moved it online, and we've pooled our resources with all of the local sections in Ohio. And it's a 4-week event. October is, of course, planning month, which is why we had picked October to do this event. Each week has a different theme, which I saw that somebody just dropped that link in the chat. As students, you are all members of APA Ohio. If you need help figuring out how to get connected, we can certainly be that facilitator for you. But the conference this year is free to APA Ohio members and APA Ohio student members. That really is to lower the bar. Many, both private consulting firms and of course public agencies have, constricted their budgets due to COVID-19. A reduction in revenue is anticipated as more people move out of an office setting and work from home. So that's really why these educational opportunities are free or no cost in 2020 and 2021. And the most exciting, in my opinion, is tomorrow's keynote speaker. So if you are free at 12:30, Richard Rothstein, the author of The Color of Law, is speaking. This is a live presentation catered specifically to Ohio. He's spoken to other state chapters of the American Planning Association, but this is really going to focus on, some of the equity issues in Ohio, which will be, really engaging, I hope. So.
Yeah, Nikki, another plug for that. I mean, if you guys haven't read The Color of Law, it's kind of up there on the list, Life and Death, Great American Cities, City and History, Mumford, Jacobs. But I really think that book is it. I mean, when you talk about what we do, you talk about anticipating the tumult of 2020. That book lays the foundation for why things are just goofy in American cities. And yeah, I think, the variety of angles he takes into that, I'm sitting in Upper Arlington right now, which is actually, I think, featured at one point in the, in the narrative. So it's a great book, great speaker. Would highly recommend that, Nikki.
Great. Yeah, and so I encourage everyone to sign up for your free APA membership. And if you need help, you can just reach out after this, and we can help you. And yeah, if you are from another part of Ohio, yeah, definitely get involved with your section. I know after I had graduated from the BSCRP program, I spent a lot of time at the events for the Cleveland section. And like the planning field is like a pretty tight knit. And so you get to meet a lot of people really quickly. And so the people I had met at various happy hours, I run into the same people at conferences. So really good opportunity, and I highly encourage you guys to all get involved. So having said all that, we'll transition into the good stuff about our speakers' backgrounds. And I always think it's fascinating because like everyone has a different origin story, to use like comic book language. And Kyle kind of alluded to this about like planning is not like a field that everyone like it comes to mind right away. And I'll have to tell my dad that you're talking smack about being a mechanic. But yeah, I mean, I think it's always unique to hear from professionals to hear how they fell into planning. Nikki, do you want to start for us?
Sure thing. So like you mentioned, planning is, oftentimes a little known major. I have a bachelor's of science and a master's from OSU in city and regional planning. When I started at OSU as an undergrad, I did not intend to get a planning degree. I was a pre-civil engineering student and vehemently opposed to getting a planning degree. I thought it was a cop-out, and I'll explain why. So my mom is a city planner, and I didn't want to be anything like her. So I couldn't get a planning degree. That was 100% the truth. And, civil engineering didn't work out. Ended up taking all of the pre-architecture classes and being admitted to the landscape architecture program at OSU. Back then, OSU was on quarters. 1 quarter into landscape architecture, that was very clear that wasn't going to work either. So I ended up opting into city and regional planning, and I found it to be truly amazing that when you find something that you actually enjoy, things fall into place. So I really struggled at college until I found city and regional planning, and things started to make sense for me. So really enjoyed the undergraduate program, ended up moving on to get a master's degree. And during my time as a master's student, interned at the city of Dublin. And upon graduating, there was an opening for a full-time position. So I applied. Oftentimes in the public sector, there's no such thing as promotions. Every job is a competitive process, and they're only available if they're open, and they're only available if you interview and are offered the position. So, I've been really lucky. I've continued my career at the city of Dublin. And, it certainly doesn't always happen like that, but planning is luckily a really diverse field. So if you get an internship somewhere and you say, this is absolutely not for me, there are a dozen other that are not like the one you have now. And I would highly encourage you, while you're in school to try out different things. So that's kind of my origin story.
Yeah, and Nicki should really big up herself because Dublin's not an easy place to be a planner at. It's very competitive. It's probably one of the best considered communities, and if not Central Ohio, probably around the Midwest. So it's not easy getting a job there, especially not easy making a dent like Nicki has. So you should be very, very proud of that. I grew up in Central Ohio. I kind of on the far west side, in a township, as you guys are probably learning about what the hell a township is. You want to impress your friends. I was on the suburban fringe. So like right where Hilliard's kind of stopped growing. That's where we had like 4 acres and, kind of a mini farm situation going on. But I don't know. It's probably coming from listening to my dad like yell a lot about decisions being made in and around us. Hilliard was on this massive growth trajectory in the 90s, just like Dublin. Like it quadrupled in size in like 5 years. And that happened and it happened again. And so I was always living in this like region that was like every year seemingly there was something new, like that was being built, being developed, roads changing, configurations. And I don't know why, but like I always had an interest in that. Like I always had an interest in being in the conversation about how things became, you know what I mean? And I didn't know that was a career. I didn't know that was a job. Turns out in Hilliard it wasn't. It just happened. There was nobody planning any of that stuff. It was just developers running rampant. But so I got interested in it. And when I went to junior college at Columbus State, I had a professor, Bob Petrakis. You may recognize his name because he's run for governor every time he's been able to under the Green Party in Ohio. But Bob was like just a crazy, funny, super brilliant dude. And we had a class. This was a sociology class, but one of our classes was on urban studies, urban issues. We had a little focus on suburbanization and America, and it like clicked like right when he started talking about what this is, what this job is. And I go, oh man, that's what I want to study. That's what I want to do. And I went to Ohio University after that. I studied city and regional planning at the Department of Geography there, which, by the way, as you guys are thinking about course load, things you should be taking, highly recommend you guys find a way. And Nick has heard me preach on this a million times. Find a way to learn GIS. Find a way to learn mapping. I'm sure Nikki agrees with me on that. Find a way to learn the language of GIS because that is a fundamental skill for your next chapter of your life. But I was lucky enough to learn that at OU. Things are weird, guys. This is why I talk about, cultivating relationships. Because when I was at OU, I volunteered with the city of Athens, just I was counting ash trees, literally just going and counting trees for them to cut down because of the ash borer. And that planner there ended up making a connection back here in Columbus. I externed, which means intern, but you don't get paid, with the city of Columbus in 2000. This was 2010. So after I graduated, this was, right after obviously the first, the major recession. That office had been trimmed by like 50%. It was, so volunteering. Ended up meeting Vince Papsadero, former planning director, city of Dublin. At that time was with the city of Columbus. And, long story short, go to Ohio State for a master's program. And Vince put in a I interviewed for a job, was called ACP Planning at the time, now called Planning Next. But It's actually my 10th year at Planning Next. Time flies, guys. That's another thing, which is crazy. 10th year this week with Planning Next. So we're like I said, a private firm. We do community planning. I've been involved since being with Planning Next on projects, very diverse set of projects, but comprehensive planning, strategic planning, visioning, Alabama, Georgia, Indiana, more than I would have hoped, Ohio, really all over the map. And it's been great.
So I think you two are kind of a bit of unicorns because of the the planning undergrad to a master's in planning, which isn't always the case. Um, for both our master students and probably more towards our undergrad participants on the call, can you just kind of go through the maybe the kind of the steps that you took in terms of evaluating choosing to pursue your master's, and then main lessons and takeaways like during your education?
Sure. So I pursued my master's out of necessity. I was unemployable. I left my bachelor's degree without a lick of professional experience, and I couldn't get an interview to save my life. I promise you. And so, you know, it was a game time decision. I think I applied to be in the master's program in late April, right before I graduated. And, you know, really lucked out. I think maybe going back to, you know, Kyle's thing about relationships, I had great working relationships with a lot of the professors at OSU, which, you know, probably explains why I stayed at OSU to get my master's degree. I think without those, you know, great working relationships, it probably would not have been so seamless, you know, to get a master's degree. Oftentimes, you know, you don't come to it in such a linear form, but I will say I don't think you need a degree in planning to be a planner. I don't think you need a bachelor's degree in planning to be a planner. I don't think you need a master's degree in planning to be a planner. You probably do need a college degree in something, you know, that is tangentially related to planning. But lots of people that work in planning, you know, don't have that educational background. You know, maybe they have a background in real estate. Maybe they have a background in finance. Maybe their background is in geography and cartography. You know, maybe it's political science. So I think it's a very diverse field, and because of that, you know, a lot of folks can adapt to fit various roles. Kyle, you want to go?
Yeah, I agree with all that, Nikki. I think there's a weird, perhaps unnecessary antagonism in planning against a number of other fields. So planners and engineers, planners and architects, planners and politicians for that matter. I think that stems from the fact that planners really sit at this odd position at the center of a number of disciplines and a number of really systems. And I love that aspect of it. I love the fact that you're really an expert in nothing, but you know a lot about everything. And it makes you a very interesting professional, I think, to be around. And I think that really, if you're talking about one skill or intangible that you need to do this job well, it absolutely is curiosity. So if you're not interested, you know, in what you're doing, and that goes for every career, duh, of course. Yeah, I want a doctor to be curious about my body. I want a mechanic to be curious about my car. But with planning, it's a special kind of curiosity. It's like you get to be curious about big time issues. Everything that's in the news has a planning angle, right? And I love that about it. But there's another set of skills I think that relate to that curiosity, which is, you need to be committed, hard worker. You've got to be unafraid to be uncomfortable, because there's going to be moments, God knows I've had thousands, where you're in front of people and you're being asked direct questions that they expect you to have the answer to. Especially as a private sector person, you're a hired hand, and sometimes you're the you're the vest in front of them, right? Trying to protect the others from the harder questions. So I think you need to have thick skin. You need to be committed. And those are kind of the intangibles, or the softer skills of it all. I think if there's another soft skill I would throw in there, are we answering the right question? I'm not sure. The other soft skill I would throw in there is just, the ability to speak. It's not something that's easy, and you can't just learn it. You have to do it. And that gets back to that idea of being comfortable, being uncomfortable, because there's going to be moments where you've got to talk to either people that, you wouldn't normally, be asked to. So if it's like elected officials, or if it's business leaders, or it's a lot of people, all of a sudden find yourself in front of 1,000 people, and you got to sound smart or at least pretend, to be smart, which is another acquired skill. So I think that's another intangible soft skill that's out there. But, hard skills with this job, I mentioned GIS, design is important, communication, written communication. You've got to be able to write, and learn how to write. You got to be able to create graphics and maps that are compelling, that are concise, all those sorts of things. So, I think it's a solid combination, Nick. And I think that's why this job to me, is endlessly fascinating, because it's not just about building a bridge or, designing a building. It's about creating a more harmonious, prosperous community, or set of communities. How's that for grandiose?
That was great. And you actually got ahead of my question. So your foresight is awesome. Can you guys talk about kind of the really rewarding aspects of your particular sectors, and then maybe some challenges? And I know Kyle just touched on a little bit, but yeah.
Yeah, happy to. I think, you've heard about a few times tonight already, but it's really rewarding to build relationships and build rapport with people you work with on an everyday basis. Certainly there's, the networking, but the types of relationships and rapport that I'm talking about are, the types of relationships that I have with, various consultants that I work with on a regular basis, or developers that I'm negotiating with on a regular basis. And it's not like you see a developer once, or you work with a consultant once. These are relationships that are, grown over time, and you can use the equity in the relationship to continue to negotiate over time. I think negotiation is a great skill to have as a planner, particularly in the public sector. I have a strong focus in development, so always looking to figure out how development proposals plug into the greater plan. And when communities have a plan and a path, maybe unlike Hilliard in the 90s, it makes it a lot easier to work and negotiate within that framework. So for me, building relationships and building rapport has been uber rewarding. Other things that are, really rewarding about the public sector, getting to see places change over time. So I started working in Dublin in 2014. There are parts of Dublin that are unrecognizable. There are things that are no longer there. and new things that have replaced that. You know, the one example everyone's drawn to is Bridge Park. When I started in Dublin, there was no Bridge Park. There was a dilapidated shopping center that was 90% vacant, with a Planet Fitness and a drive-through Tim Hortons. And today it's, you know, 16 to 20 mixed-use buildings with, you know, office, retail, mixed use, $22 million pedestrian bridge. And, you know, the world has changed. So that's been a really rewarding experience, you know, to see that change, to be a part of negotiating what that development looks like. And, you know, public sector planners could not have done that alone. We have consulted with numerous firms and really sectors working together and people working together and partnerships with developers. That's what makes the mechanics of planning kind of work. So getting to see all those pieces at play has been really awesome. And yeah, that's what I would say. Kyle, what do you think?
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, every job has its, you know, its highs and lows. I think Nicki just hit on the exact thing you give up in the private sector, which is being able to sit with the community and really see things through, right? Being a project leader, following through on that project, watching the transformation happen, and being, you know, being a Robert Moses, for lack of a better term, you know, in that transformation. In this case, a good transformation, not highways through downtown or anything like that. But I think on the private side, what's interesting, one of the principal benefits, though, is being able to do a wide variety of work in a wide variety of communities. I've worked in places like Loudoun County, Virginia, richest county in the country, fastest growing county in the country, whole different set of issues. And a project I just finished in Flint, Michigan, right? So it's really fascinating, actually, to be able to see the country in that way and work with mayors and work with leaders, nonprofit leaders that range, you know, in big city, small city, rural, urban. You get to really get a sense of how this country actually works, and why it doesn't in some situations as well. When this is a short story, but back in 2016, night of the election was the night before we had a kickoff meeting in Athens, Georgia. And 4 years ago was an interesting time. I don't know that anybody really predicted the way the world would change that next day, but it did. And we started this project on a weird kind of note or tone. But that, in terms of success, I tell that story primarily because I could tell a number of stories about different communities, but that project was particularly important to me. The project was called Vision Athens. It was a community visioning project, community plan. It was not just the public sector, not just the city of Athens, but also the major health provider, the University of Georgia, a number of other nonprofits involved with it. And, you know, it was a beast of a plan. I mean, we worked over a year and a half to develop that project completely out, had, you know, around 5,000 people engaged in different forms of community engagement, developed an action plan. It was about 103 actions. But I think the reason I tell it as a success story is, you know, out of the gate, they made the best decision they ever could have made, which was a great hire for their project manager. And, you know, over these last 4 years, which trace right along with the last 4 years, it's been amazing to watch them, you know, bring that plan to life. There were a lot of physical projects that are part of it, but there's also a lot of non-physical projects. Athens is the poorest county in Georgia, if you could believe it. So there's a lot of need there, a lot of division. And that whole project was about trying to create a more equitable, a more opportunity-packed place for everybody that's there. And it's been really cool to watch from afar, that project manager there, Aaron Barger, take it from a written thing to something that's real. And especially, you know, we talk about the pandemic. When the pandemic really hit, Envision Athens, which transformed into kind of the nonprofit entity down there. They were the spot. I mean, that's where everyone came to organize their work, organize volunteering. And I know for a fact that they had an impact, and that process had an impact. So for me, and you're not being one that gets a chance to really go back a lot or revisit things, it was really cool to watch that plan transform into something that, had a real impact on people's lives. And, guys, when it gets down to it with planning, I think people do it. You're not going to make millions of dollars in this job, right? But you do it because you can actually, as sappy as it sounds, make a difference. And I know Nicki sees that. I know that I feel that. So I guess that's the big side. And the challenge side, Nick, to answer your question, this is a very long-winded answer. I'm sorry. But on the challenge side, you got to deal with people. And that ain't easy. It doesn't matter where you are or what you're doing. And in the private side, you got to learn people quickly. What motivates them, what brings them to the table, what turns them off to work. So sometimes your personality can take you a long way, but sometimes you got to work hard for people. So those are hard. That's the primary challenge in all walks of life is finding the right way to engage and help people.
That's great, Kyle. Next question would be, have either of you thought about ever switching over, or are you really comfortable where in the particular section that you're in?
Nick, you want to take that first?
Sure, yeah. So I have a really strong, proclivity for the public sector. I really enjoy public service. I had mentioned that my mom is a planner. We do completely different things. I could not do her job. She could not do my job. That is how diverse planning is. But as I was growing up, she worked in the public sector, and I saw what public service was firsthand. And, a commitment to a group of people is something that's really both personally and professionally important to me. And I think that finding a role that aligns with your values and is meaningful has proved to be really rewarding. So, I've not really contemplated doing anything in the private sector. That's not to say that could never happen. I really enjoy working with folks from the private sector. I think it brings a fresh perspective to lots of projects and a shield when you need it, Kyle. But that's kind of where I'm at on the private versus public.
Yeah, shield is probably right, Nicki, sometimes, especially when it comes to Bridge Street, because, there wasn't any contention at all involved with that project. Kicking and screaming, I think I would switch sides. I think we both, you kind of find a place, and I don't know. I mean, I think there's definitely aspects, Nicki, of what you do that I'm very, very jealous of, for sure. And I think it gets back to this idea of being able to see the project through, or really walk with something over a long period of time. For me, though, I guess it'd be hard to give up. It'd be hard to give up the cycle or diversity of projects that we get to go with, in the private sector. I love that aspect of it. But it comes with a lot of, I don't know what the term is. There's a little bit of volatility in the private sector. The last 5 months have been tricky, to say the least, especially if you're in a larger firm. You are always, you need to be on your toes. You need to have your head up. A lot of what we do as a firm is around, development and marketing, like going out and having to find and, make your dinner, not that isn't volatility in the public sector as well, because there is, but private sector, your reputation is absolutely everything, and you can't afford to mail it in even once, because that's who you are then for eternity. And I know individuals and firms who that's what's happened, right? So I think there's a little bit of scariness to that, but it's worth it to me to be able to do what we get to do.
That's awesome. So we have our last 10 minutes scheduled. So if any of the audience members have a question, a burning question that they would like to be answered, you can drop it in the chat. And so I'll give you some time to think about it. So with what's going on with COVID, and for our folks who might be graduating either like in December or maybe next spring, what advice do you have for those people as they start their job hunt?
I mean, I guess my advice would be, to continue to network, even if it's online, to maintain relationships that you had prior to COVID, and making sure you are continuing to, foster that. Because I think at the end of the day, having those, interpersonal connections, even if it's just for an amazing recommendation, maybe you're looking at a job out of state and, having a network here in Columbus is not necessarily going to help you, but, eventually someone's going to pick up the phone and ask, what type of person they're about to hire. And, having someone who can honestly vouch for you, I think is extremely valuable, as opposed to, something that's a little more superficial and, you worked with them and, you did fine. And so I think, emphasizing that human connection is going to continue to be important. And I would say, don't be afraid. In the public sector, I'm as busy, if not busier than ever. I don't know what your workload is like, Kyle, but I think there is still work out there. Things are moving forward. Communities still need people. There are still planning issues that need to be addressed and need bodies to begin to address those. So, happy to be a resource if we can.
Yeah.
Thoughts, Kyle?
Yeah, same deal, same ditto, Nikki. I think that continuing the relationship building, right? Find ways to get informational lunches with people or Zoom calls, or just again, this idea of some idea of what you want to do, and going find people to do that right now, and see if they'll give you some time, because I bet planners tend to be pretty nice people, they're really they really want to help others, climb the ladder. It's not like architects, you know what I mean? So I think find a way to connect with those people and use Nikki, me, to do that. The other thing too is don't ignore your skill set, right? Don't take it for granted. Find ways to learn new skills that you think might be helpful. Learn SketchUp, learn GIS, watch YouTube videos about random stuff that is interesting to you. And the other piece of this, like, get used to reading a lot. Reading is part of the job, duh, but also, like, if you're curious about this, improve it, I think, by putting books on your shelf that are seminal to what we do. Don't be someone who talks about Jane Jacobs who hasn't read Life and Death. Read Life and Death. It is that important, Read City and History. Read, God help you, but read, the Robert Moses book, which is like 1,200 pages. And if you do, then you're really part of the club, right? But beyond that, Color of Law, these other books that, are just so important to what we do. Find a space for that in your brain. And then, Nikki's absolutely right. There was a pause. We got really nervous, I think, around April. But then, the dam broke, and there's a lot of projects happening out there, and planning is a burgeoning field. Planners are being hired in economic development, politics. Like I talked about with a lot of the George Floyd protests. I mean, there's a lot of recognition now about how this is a primary issue, not secondary, primary issue in our lives. So it's opening up a lot of space for people that know what the hell they're talking about. So make sure you're one of those people, and you're not bullshitting. You really know what you're talking about.
So speaking of dams breaking, we have a influx of questions, so we might have to be a little bit more quick hitting. So Natalie's asking, how do you measure success in the private sector versus public, both individually and in your organization?
Trophies, awards, major awards. No, I think it is absolutely based on what comes out of the ground. What happens after you leave. So I had an interview today and for a project in Muncie. An economist I work with a lot, him and I were asked this exact same question, by those interviewers, like, how do you judge success? And I mean, how else could you judge it? Would you judge it by what the plan looks like? No. Would you judge it by how many people you're involved with? Probably not. It's about what you actually get done, Nick. And I think that there's a number of things that I'm very proud of our firm for having, had a stake in or having a hand in, but you have to judge it by implementation.
Yeah, and I mean, I would second that. Dublin is big on implementation. We use our plans to the greatest extent possible, and we leverage them to make development better, to make places better, to raise the quality of life for our residents. And I mean, I would really say that the success of the organization is a reflection of, the quality of the community. And so anything we can do to reinforce that community, to engage people, is how I look at success. So.
No doubt.
Next question. So Claire's having trouble with her student membership, so we will I will reach out after this, and we can see if we can troubleshoot. A question about AICP candidate program for students. Could either or both of you provide input on the program and its benefits, specifically in a competitive job market? Will being an AICP candidate make enough of a difference to make it worth doing so early?
Yeah. So I would say go for it. There are lots of advantages to the AICP candidate program. I think in the end, if you postpone it and decide later that you want to do kind of the normal path to AICP accreditation, it can be much more challenging later because you are not fresh out of school. All of the topics that they're testing you on really are core competencies that you're learning in your bachelor's and master's programs. So I would encourage anyone, even if you decide that it's not ultimately something you care about and you don't want to maintain your certification, I would encourage you to at least begin that path and then decide if that's really something for you. But there are lots of benefits to being AICP certified. Planners have had to fight to be recognized as professionals. I think Kyle has mentioned, are often, looked down upon by certain other professionals, whether it's engineers or architects. I can attest that I have had an architect call me just a planner in a public meeting. So, I mean, it's real. And the professional certification is reinforcing that we are professionals. And
yeah.
That is a huge resume builder. It's a testament to both your education and your work experience, and connects you with other professionals that have attained similar education and work experience. So definitely recommend it.
Well, first of all, Nicki, I don't think people make fun of architects enough. So that's why I've made it my life mission to make fun of every aspect of their life. But that's goofy. Because we absolutely are professionals. It's 100%. I think that question is interesting with the AICP piece. One, because you're right about the freshness in your brain. Like it's good to kind of get it done quickly, just because you're going to forget Euclid v. Ambler at some point, or, the year certain things are passed. Yeah, so there's a lot of number of questions in there that like it helps you be fresh on. Not that you can't refresh later. It's also going to be cheaper, I think, to do it. Nikki, I might be wrong, but to do it as a student than it will, later on. So it definitely has its advantages. Nick, I saw a question pop up in the chat, and I know we're coming up on the hour, so I just want to make sure I had a chance to answer that around, impressing during an internship. I think it's a great question, Nick, one that you haven't quite mastered yet at planning next, but I'm sure you'll get it eventually. No, I'm just kidding. He's doing great. When you're an intern, you just want to make sure that, you're finding a way to be helpful, to be curious, and to be developing some skills while you're there. So it's got to be a two-way street. So you need to have some expectations of your employer too, to say, hey, and be checking in with them, him or her, as much as you can, to say, how am I doing? What could I be learning more of? How can I be more helpful? But making sure that each week you're walking with a little bit more than you had the week before.
Yeah, and just to second that, I have always considered our interns to be permanent part-time professionals. So I would encourage you all to show up to work like you are a valued member of the team, because you are, and you are fulfilling a critical piece of the puzzle, because you are. It's not meant to just carry you along for the ride. It really is to hopefully teach you what it is like to work in a planning office and be, a key contributor. So work hard, show up on time, look professional, do good work.
And Nikki, adding on to that too, because you guys only have 2 years, but also don't be afraid if you're in there for a month, you go, I don't want to do this. You quickly make up that decision, because you only get 2 years. It's going to fly by if you're in grad school right now. And you don't want to spend 2 years finding out at the end of that that's really wasn't what I wanted to be doing. So quickly determine if it's a good match for you. If it is, lean into it heavily.
Completely agree, Kyle.
Well, we are 2 minutes past our time. Thank everyone for sticking around with us. If we didn't get to your question, I will reach out separately and see if we can get you connected, or get your question answered. Thank you everyone for taking the time, and thank you especially to our speakers for spending their night with us. I know that they're very busy people, and it just really means a lot for you to come spend time with us and share your knowledge. So I just want to thank you on behalf of the CRIPSE board, and I'm sure the other attendees are really happy that you came here.
Thank you very much, Nick, and you're a wonderful host, my man.
Okay, have a great evening, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
All right. So I think it went really well. We had like
23 participants.
That was so cool. I saw so many people from